Death taxes and Kevin Colbert and the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting wide receivers and drafting quality wide receivers. And that's what happens in the second round of the 2022 NFL draft. I'm Mike Asti. That's Nick Farabaugh. And we are going to now react and analyze the Steelers drafting George Pickens, the national champion out of Georgia. So the athletic, bigger option than maybe the other receiver that some would have thought the Steelers were going to go after. The Steelers do end up with Pickens, 6'3", 195 out of Georgia, has the big game experience. They will pluck him in now with Kenny Pickett. So you'll maybe in the future be able to hear calls of Pickett to Pickens. So Nick, what do you think of this pick? Give us an evaluation of George Pickens out of Georgia, now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this continues to be a draft that it feels like the Steelers kind of have their pick of positions of need, and they made a decision here.
Yeah, well, I think this is a great pick for Pittsburgh. I really do. I think Pickens is a lot of what they need. A guy that can be pressed off the line of scrimmage. So now they don't just have Deontay Johnson for that role. So now they have a guy that can play at that X spot should Deontay get hurt, or they can move Deontay around a little bit, that Z spot. Claypool now can move to the slot, which I think is a good thing for him. I think there's a lot of good things from here. Just talking about Pickens, the player specifically, I think, just talking about what he does and what he can do specifically. Winning downfield is what his MO is. Athletic, very good at the line of scrimmage, as I said, knows how to really stack corners. So he's not going to let guys come back into his frame, which is really the big thing that Claypool always does. And so you look at him, great body control, great ball skills, good ball tracker, a guy that's going to be able to make contested catches above the rim consistently against 6'3", 195. He gives them size. He gives them a consistent contested catch guy. He gives them a downfield threat. This is a guy that has first-round tape, to be quite honest with you. Fell for a few different reasons, but I think that his tape is phenomenal. I think it's some of the best in the entire class, and I think the Steelers get that downfield threat they needed, but don't let that just kind of simmer you. He can win at all three levels of the field. So they get a really dynamic player that's flexible and can do a lot of different things down the field.
So sounds like you love the pick. What's the ceiling, though, for George Pickens? Because the Steelers do have Deontay Johnson still in the fold, and he kind of emerged as that wide receiver one for Pittsburgh, mostly because of, unlike the others who maybe were more athletic freaks, he was able to get that separation. He was able to have that number one ability kind of show. Still a little bit too much in terms of the drops. We saw that at the end of the year last year, but a Pro Bowl caliber season. And if Chase Claypool can step up, he really will need to step up as well. That'll help solidify things. But Juju gone, James Washington gone. This is not as deep of a receiver group as maybe it was a year or so ago, and it's dealt with tons of injuries. But say Deontay's one right now and he sticks around. What's the potential for Pickens? Can he be a one if Deontay doesn't stick? Or can he be a legit 1A, 1B if Deontay is there? And what is Pickens' ceiling and potential even amongst the NFL? Are we looking at a Pro Bowl receiver? Are we looking at a guy that could become your wide receiver one that's not viewed as just that on the Steelers, but in the National Football League?
I think we're talking about a guy that can reach wide receiver one potential. I really do. Again, there's that elite athleticism with his size. We just don't see very often. But this isn't a Chase Claypool situation where, the drawbacks are so obvious on the field. Like Pickens doesn't have super obvious drawbacks. The big drawback for him is his yak ability. So he's never going to be elite after the catch. But okay, the big cons with him are, one, he's not super strong right now. He's very wiry. So he's 6'3", 195. You need to get that up a little bit. 6'3", 210, 215, feel a lot better. So that's okay. You'll work on that. That's easily fixable. It's whatever. You just get in the weight room and work your butt off and you're good. So I think he's really there already in a lot of ways. I think the potential, though, is, okay, can he become more of a technician in his routes? I think that's going to be the big thing. As a route runner, can he kind of improve mid-route, using his eyes, doing a little bit of those things? That'll become more and more natural for him, but it'll allow him to win more, in the middle of the field and at the second level. But he's got a good feel for zone coverage already. He's got that athleticism. He's got that size, height, weight, speed combo. He's got great hands. I think this is one of the big things. You talk about the drops, right, with Deontay. Claypool has some weird psycho stuff every now and then.
He has his moments as well. Yes.
Where he has his moments. And usually with Chase, if he does something bad, it kind of just spirals downhill. And so that's the thing with him. And then Deontay gets in his head. Pickens, man, I'll tell you what, when this dude is throwing the ball, he's not dropping it. I mean, straight up. Huge catch radius. And he has, just absolute, he might have stickum attached to his hands because the guy catches everything thrown his way. And I think for Kenny Pickett in particular, this is going to be huge for him because Kenny Pickett oftentimes has that great accuracy, right? But he loves to give his receivers one-on-one chances too. So Pickens is going to have so many opportunities to do this. And I just view him as a guy that has the fluidity, has the quickness, the explosiveness, the speed. And if he improves as a route runner, I can't see him not being a 3-level threat to win wherever you want him to be an explosive play threat, to still attack you underneath, to still be quick enough and fast enough to win underneath and get some yak. He's not going to be a creative yak guy, but he's faster than a lot of people. So if you get him, say, wide open on, a drag route, he'll be able to take it for 15, 20 yards because he's fast. So I think that this is a guy that can do all you want, really. And I think he's a really good player. I love the fit. I do think even if Deontay sticks around, he can be a 1A to his 1B.
And it might be another guy that catches everything that maybe Pickett or whoever the quarterback is for next year and beyond will love in, say, the red zone, because that's a territory that you really want to make sure you have the hands and you want to have those one-on-one battles. So it also appears like this is a fit for Kenny Pickett, who, again, question mark on who starts week 1 of the 2022 season, but Pickett, clearly the Steelers guy of the future. Tomlin and Kevin Colbert just raved about how much they loved him. He was their QB1. It wasn't like they're settling on the man. They had their pick of the litter. They wanted him. They thought he would be gone. He was there. They took him. So they're happy with Pickett for sure. And Pickett to Pickens might be about also what's best for Pickett. So maybe Pickens is best for Pickett and they're building around that QB. Mike Asti, Nick Farabaugh here as we're reacting to the Steelers' second-round selection of George Pickens, wide receiver out of Georgia. Another wide receiver for Kevin Colbert. His swan song draft will be potentially the next quarterback to be the next great one after Ben Roethlisberger, or at least that's the idea with Kenny Pickett. Not perfect, but that's the idea. And then even a better consistency for drafting receivers. The Steelers very rarely miss drafting receivers, certainly during the Kevin Colbert era. They churn them in, they churn them out, but they have success. Now, we do have to mention what has been debated a little bit already since this pick was made and what was thought to potentially be a possibility entering this selection for the Steelers, and that's Sky Moore, taking a few picks after Pittsburgh. But at the time of the Steelers selection of George Pickens, they could have had Sky Moore. What's the difference between these two receivers? Why do you think some maybe would have preferred Sky Moore outside of trying to connect the dots like they did with Pickett for the local flavor? And why did the Steelers go George Pickens and not Sky Moore? Because they easily could have went the other way, like they could have went the other way with the quarterback.
I think it's partially about that catch radius we talked about, just giving Kenny Pickett that massive target downfield. Now I think, Sky Moore can win. I think he can play inside, outside. Now he's smaller. He's 5'8", Pickens 6'3". So that is a significant difference. And maybe that factored into it a little bit, but I never saw Sky Moore's, size hinder him too much. Now the catch radius thing's obviously going to be, it hinders him, of course. I thought you also had a few issues with concentration drops. Maybe they didn't want to kind of look at that. I think Pickens, again, is a sure-handed guy, but I think they're both going to be downfield winners. I think that Pickens gives you more upside in terms of contested catches. So I think that's kind of important. I think Moore gives you more upside in terms of yak. Now, again, they have the yak guy already. It's Deontay. I mean, they have that kind of mold. So again, if they take Moore, it's more of an indictment against Deontay, I think. And so that's something to look at. I think that this now allows them to give flexibility along with Deontay, and I think it keeps that door for a Deontay extension super wide open. In fact, maybe likely at this point. So I think that that's certainly something to take a look at. Now, I think that you look at someone like, say, Pickens, and you have the height, weight, speed factor. I think that immediately, I think Moore is a better 3-level threat. I think he's more polished as a route runner. I think he's more polished off the line. But I think Pickens, he's polished enough to be a really good player right away, but he has a little bit more upside, I think, in terms of the fit here with the Steelers. I don't know if I'm going to say, I think Moore has tons of upside too, but I think Pickens has specifically more upside within the Steelers system. And so I think when you look at what Pickens brings, it gives you a little bit more flexibility to play wherever you want. And I think also he gives you that size that you kind of lost with Juju Smith-Schuster. You kind of lose that physicality of Juju, right? When he leaves, you get that big slot guy that can really bring the physicality. Now you have it because Pickens is a super physical guy, super aggressive. And so I think they wanted just a little bit more of that, the physicality, that size, the contested catch type of deal. Again, both of these guys are great players. I think that Sky Moore's going to do great in Kansas City. I think Pickens is going to have a nice career here in Pittsburgh. I just think that the Steelers were looking for those attributes that Pickens brings over more.
And once again, it was a draft that just kind of fell in the lap of the Steelers so far. And I think no matter what any of us think or what anyone else there thinks, the Pittsburgh Steelers love their first two picks. They love Kenny Pickett. They love George Pickens. They're very happy with what their situation has been so far in this draft for sure. Nick Farabaugh, Mike Asti here. We're talking George Pickens, the Steelers' second-round selection to pair him with Kenny Pickett, the QB of the future. Maybe currently Mitch Trubisky, who knows? But still, certainly a guy to be with the Steelers for the long haul is George Pickens, regardless of what happens with Deontay. Just lastly, Nick, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier as well in your analysis, but if George Pickens doesn't work out and doesn't become the wide receiver one ceiling that you mentioned earlier, doesn't become at least a productive player, a wide receiver two with Deontay, doesn't become another one of those notches in the belt of Kevin Colbert in terms of the receivers he's drafted over the last 2 decades. If something happens and this is a rare whiff and swing and miss and it doesn't work for Pickett and Pickens together, what would be the reason?
Well, I would have to assume the reason he fell. Well, there are 2 reasons for that. One, he tore his ACL and came back for the championship game, but did tear his ACL, so he didn't play a lot last year. But there's also the maturity concerns. Again, I can't speak to the validity of those. I've never talked to George Pickens outside of a press conference setting. Talked to the dude once at the combine, and that's the one time I've talked to George Pickens in my life. So I can't tell you, the validity of George Pickens' character. It's just the concerns about the maturity. Those have started making the rounds. He's had a few issues on the field, fighting with the Georgia Tech guy, spraying water on the Tennessee player, being suspended for half a game for team violations.
Is he a diva receiver? Is that going to be a label that some in media are going to want to throw at this man?
It is, but the receiver position is inherently diva.
I know. I agree. Actually, there's a whole there's a couple documentaries about that. Actually, I believe that if you ever watch the Dark Side of the Ring documentaries for wrestling, they do one with NFL and they do go in that direction. So I hear that because it's the position that's dependent on somebody else. You can be incredibly elite if somebody else doesn't get it done, including others actually with the O-line as well. Then you're stuck. You're stuck in the mud. Your money's going to be in trouble. So I do get that, but it does feel like that he would open himself up to be that next diva receiver that some could focus in on if he goes one way or another. And Mike Tomlin's obviously not going to put up with that from a rookie. Maybe he will from an AB who already had a Hall of Fame career for a while, but not from a rookie, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, I think Pickens I think that would be the area to be worried most about. Again, on the field, I think he's really good. Now, there are some things he'll need to work on. I think he needs to work a little bit on his footwork. I think he needs to work a little bit again on kind of positioning his body during the middle of those routes, using his eyes a little bit, becoming a little bit more precise of a route runner. Okay. But even at his worst right now, he's wide receiver 2-ish material. Yeah. So, I mean, that's not a miss in round 2. So I think the only way this kind of completely blows is personally for me, I think it's that the character stuff is more serious. Even if all the stuff I named is like true and what happens and he like is immature and he has some, dumb incidents on the field, that's not inherently going to make him a bad pick. It's only if, say, something really bad happens off the field to where they can't handle him. I mean, unless he goes full AB or something like that. I mean, people consider Juju a character concern.
Well, like a Ruggs situation with the Raiders. If you have like your guy and ends up in a complete off the field disaster that you just can't get over.
Like that's the way way it's going to be. Either that or, I think it's either going to be maturity stuff or, maybe he gets that injury bug where the ACL and that ends up being an issue, something like that. Again, I see his floor being like a really good wide receiver 3. And then I see where he can go from here. I think it's wide receiver 1. So I think this is going to end up being a hit for Kevin Colbert. I really like this pick.
Yeah, and it really fits with Kenny Pickett, obviously the QB of the future, and it really fits with the Steelers, and it's a neat position. It ends up being best available. It seems to fit in what they're trying to do, and I'm sure they vetted him as much as they can. Nothing's perfect. They vetted AB and others as well. But yeah, some things you can't control. He's young. I was immature at that age as well. You're gonna be that way. Receiver position kind of lends itself to being a diva position nonetheless. But we will see what happens with him. But it does feel like the Steelers gotta love the situation right now, and they gotta love the second round pick in George Pickens.